Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the toddler stage. This is around 12 to 36 months. Physical growth or physiologic changes. The growth slows somewhat. They're still growing faster than they will at, 6, but the growth rate slows somewhat, so their appetite decreases. That becomes important when we start talking about the social development of toddlers. The respiratory tract also grows, so they tend to have a little bit more space, a little bit more ability to deal with respiratory infections, but they still have an increased risk. We really see those drop off after the preschool years or in the preschool years. They develop the ability to control the urinary and anal sphincters, but that doesn't mean they're toilet trained. Toilet training is dependent on a lot of other variables that have to do with personality, with opportunity, with time pressures, and so there's a lot of other factors that go into that. But physiologically, they develop sometime in toddlerhood the ability to control the urinary and anal sphincters. Major milestones, toddlers should be able to walk independently. They have kind of a wide gait at first. They toddle, that's why they're called toddlers. By 2 years, they usually can go up and down stairs. They can throw a ball overhand at around 18 months. They can jump with 2 feet at around 2.5 years. And you'll see them trying, and they'll try and their feet don't come off the ground. When they can get both feet off the ground, typically that's around 2.5 years. Psychosocial development is autonomy versus shame and doubt. So late in the first year, they figure out other people are separate beings. And then they begin to figure out, hey, I am too, and I can decide what I do. So toddlers' favorite words are no and me do it, or I do it. Okay. So autonomy versus shame and doubt. They start to understand that they can control their actions, and they may begin to try to control the environment. Frequently, they use eating, toileting, and bedtime to assert that autonomy. Okay. So that's because those are 3 things we really can't force. You can't make someone eat. You can, but it's really not a good idea. You can't make someone go to the bathroom, and you cannot make them go to sleep. Okay. So frequently those are 3 areas that they pick as, this is where I'm making my stand. I get to decide. Eating, that becomes easier because they're not as hungry. We're used to needing to feed them multiple times a day, and they still need to eat frequently because their stomachs aren't all that big, but they may take in less than we think they should. And so they're not all that hungry anyway, and it's really important to the big people that I eat this, so I'm not going to do it. Okay, very toddler. Toileting, the same thing, and bedtime. So they really want to be independent, but they're also often a little bit afraid of that independence. So they go back and forth between trying to do their own thing and running back to their caregiver for comfort. Negativism is very common. They learn the word no late in the first year, and then their answer to everything is no, even if it's yes. Do you want to go to bed? No. Do you want to take your medicine? No. Do you want ice cream? No, but then they're reaching for the ice cream. So they're also, if you've seen on social media, there's a genre of memes or of posts that it's reasons my child is crying. And they're the funniest things because toddlers have really big feelings, and they are beginning to grasp that they have some ability to control things, but so many things are out of their control. And so they just fall apart. Toddlers can be very ritualistic. I want the green cup. I'm not going to drink unless I get the green cup. I know that I don't care if the green cup's in the dishwasher. I'm not going to drink unless I have the green cup. Very ritualistic. Tantrums are common, but I want you to distinguish between tantrums and meltdowns. A tantrum is, I'm throwing a fit because I didn't get what I wanted. A meltdown is about being overwhelmed. And the reason it's important to know the difference is because the response is different. A child that is just mad and throwing a fit because they didn't get what they wanted can be ignored until they're ready to address that. A child who is overwhelmed with all of the sensory input coming in, or overwhelmed with their feelings, or maybe they're hungry or they're sleepy and they can't go to bed, they may need different intervention to be able to calm down. So I think a lot of what we identify as tantrums are meltdowns, and there are ways that parents can decrease that likelihood. However, tantrums and meltdowns are part of toddlerhood, very common. They still relate to other people in an egocentric way. They're barely figuring out that other people are separate beings. They don't really quite grasp that those other people have feelings like they do. So they're not capable of a lot of empathy. Now, you will see toddlers, especially older toddlers, if they see someone upset, they'll come and try to comfort them sometimes. So they're developing the beginnings of that. But they still don't quite see people as consistently as capable of having feelings. So that's why when that other kid has the toy they want, they just go and take it. They're not doing that to hurt the other kid. They're doing it because they want the toy, and the other kid who also wants the toy is not really a real thing to them yet. Okay. Anticipatory guidance for toddlers. Feeding. Probably the best advice I got, because I had one of those lives on air kids. The best advice I got and what was effective for her is the parents are in charge of what is available to eat. The child is in charge of what is consumed out of that. So the parent should provide a healthy options several times a day, 3 meals, probably 2 to 3 snacks. Okay. And the child decides how much of that to consume. If the child, that takes away the power struggle, so they find some other way to assert their autonomy, and it doesn't mess with their nutrition very much. But another thing about making kids eat everything on their plates is it actually contributes to obesity later in life. So it kind of addresses 2 different things. Now, if you let the child decide how much to eat and what to eat, but there's cookies and ice cream and candy available freely to them, or that's, people are giving those to them all the time, most kids are going to choose that instead of healthy food. So the parent part is really important. What is available for them to eat? And those sweets and less healthy foods should be an occasional treat, especially for a child that's not consuming a lot or doesn't seem to be consuming a lot. I had to set some pretty firm limits with other people. If someone gives your child a jumbo size Little Debbie snack, they're probably not going to eat anything else the rest of the day. And that's not what I want her only consumption for the day to be, right? So sometimes that involves helping parents learn to set boundaries with others. But the parents decide what's available to eat, provide healthy options. The child decides whether and how much to eat. If they skip a meal, they usually are hungry by the next meal and are willing to eat. For sleep, toddlers want to keep doing whatever it is they're doing. They're interested. They want to keep on, or they want to know what the big people are doing. So they often try to delay going to bed or going to sleep. They try to avoid sleep at times. So a consistent bedtime routine is helpful with that. Play, toddlers still learn by play. Most toddler learning should be play-based. So think again about safety. They're still going to put things in their mouth. So we're still worried about choking hazards up to at least 3 or 4. And let me tell you that even older kids stick stuff in their mouths sometimes, but at least 3 or 4, we're still worried about choking hazards. We're still worried about safety things. If they try to get on, or they're on any kind of riding toys, start the habit of a helmet early. And think about what is next for them developmentally and what toys will help promote that. Discipline, a lot of parents really struggle with the toddler years. And so we want to encourage them to understand developmentally why toddlers behave the way that they do. Why are toddlers doing this? And what's the best way to handle it? Frequently for toddlers, one of the best methods of discipline can be just removing them from that situation. But parents can begin some consequences for behavior. Again, we're going to discourage physical discipline. Physical discipline is not considered abuse legally, but from a developmental standpoint, it's discouraged. For safety, it is the adult's job to keep children safe. Do not depend on a child's obedience to keep them safe. So kids can begin to learn at this age to mind, okay? But we cannot let them test that out with running in the street or staying away from the pool or not sticking things in the outlet, because they're not very good at it yet. And we cannot depend on their obedience to keep them safe. That's the one major thing. For MVC is still a leading cause of death, and that's going to extend through all age groups in the US. So they need to be in a properly fitted car seat, needs to be rear facing as long as possible. I think in Oklahoma, it has to be for 2 years now. I'm not positive, my kids are past that age, but they need to be a properly fitted car seat, rear facing as long as possible in the back seat. We also need to look at pedestrian versus car accidents. Anytime a child is around vehicles, an adult needs to actually have a hand on them. Anytime there's a toddler near a vehicle that could be moving, an adult needs to have a hand on them. Another important piece of that is to have anyone to always go check around behind the car before backing out. Drowning, pool needs a fence. Toddlers can still fall into buckets and toilets and bathtubs and have a hard time getting out because they're still top heavy, especially in the first part of the toddler years. So still don't leave them unattended around any source of water. Babies and toddlers can drown in an inch of water easily. Burns, anybody who's had kids learns pretty quickly that pot handles need to be turned backward on the stove so they're not hanging out to be grabbed by the toddler. Again, we want to teach kids, don't touch that, it's hot, but we also want to have a physical barrier to prevent them because they're not always going to listen. Poisonings, kids pick up things and put them in their mouth. So think about medications, cleaning agents. One of my kids actually took one of the Clorox toilet wand attachment things, a little scrubby, a clean one, or one that hadn't been used yet, and put it in their mouth. Why? I don't know, but kids will do those things. So keep all of those things as away from children as possible. I told my mom once when I had 2 preschoolers and 2 toddlers that I ran out of up. There was no more up in my house to put things. So also have parents keep the poison control number where it's easily visible, have it programmed into their phones, because most parents with toddlers and preschoolers end up calling poison control at least once. Foreign body airway obstruction, toddlers still need hot dogs, grapes, things like that, cut up into small irregular shaped chunks so they can't block an airway completely. Think about hard vegetables like a carrot that they can bite off a chunk that can get in their airway. So we still need to be thinking about choking hazards. Not only that, they pick up things off the floor and stick it in their mouth. So we're still thinking about choking hazards. Okay, next section will be about preschoolers.